Hey guys, Alex here. So having talked about general guidelines on how to play Othello by playing group small insight and recognizing that the key to Othello is actually mobility, in the next couple of episodes we want to talk about different techniques to actually help you control mobility. And of course there are 101 ways to actually do that. So I hope to cover them one by one and hopefully all of these techniques will help you improve your game. So today we want to start off with talking about Edgeplay. Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Othello Edgeplay basics. So Edgeplay is definitely important in Othello because the perimeter of the board or the edges of the board basically forms a large part of the end game, and also as both players try to avoid playing C squares or X squares at the start, the board will eventually come to a point whereby you control of edges or feeding of edges becomes extremely important. And if you know Edgeplay well enough, you could easily win at a very early stage of the game. Today's topics are the types of edges, attacking unbalanced edges, and defensive edge play. So let us now talk about the types of edges that you have. So basically you would have two types, just the balanced and the unbalanced edge in general. So for the balanced edges, you would see actually 4 discs on the edge, all of the same color, and for a 6 disc balance edge, you'll see 6. So over here on the board, you can see on the right side in the H column, you see 4 black discs, which is basically a balanced edge. And on the left, you have 6 black discs, which is also a balanced edge. So how do you tell? When you look at the center line between rows 4 and 5, you can see there are 3 discs on the top of the center line for the 6 disc edge, and there are 3 discs below. So similarly for the 4 disc balance edge, you have 2 above and 2 below. So that's why it's balanced. So for unbalanced, you generally have 3 or 5 disc unbalanced edges. So if you look at over here for the white at the top, there are 3 discs on the right based on this center line. There are 3 discs on the right and there are none on the left. So this makes it a 3 disc unbalanced edge. And at the bottom, you see 5 discs of white being 3 on the right and 2 on the left. So that makes it an unbalanced edge. So in general, balanced edges are slightly more favorable and unbalanced edges are more susceptible to attacks. So let us talk about attacking unbalanced edges next. So let's take a look at a typical situation between a player playing black who actually practices the principles of group small insight and try to maintain his discs grouped together and also on the inside, versus a player who is playing white who typically likes to grab edges and try to control the game from the edge. So in this situation, basically there is a white 4 disc balance edge to the left in the A column over here. And there is also an unbalanced edge, which is a 5 disc unbalanced edge to the bottom. So over here, you might potentially think that black could be slightly at a disadvantage if you are not familiar with the reading of a game in Othello. However, there is a way that black can easily change the game in his favor by attacking the unbalanced edge. So when black plays to A7, so basically the bottom unbalanced edge, which is a 5 disc unbalanced edge, is actually attackable by black. And how can black do that? So black can play a move to A7, which is a C square, which is typically against normal guidelines to give up a corner to A8. However, if black were to play into A7 and white were to capture A8 immediately, this would form a potential wedge move in between that allows black to jump in to B8 without having the fear to lose the B8 disc anymore because it's sandwiched in between the existing white disk. So there is no way that this black disk can be flipped on the board because there is simply no way to go around it. So after black jumps into b8, white then takes b7, basically because you don't want black to take another move inside to capture more disks on the inside. So white will naturally take b7, and then you realize that even though black has jumped into a7 earlier and sacrificed a8, but he has essentially went into b8 to potentially reach out to another corner and extend those stable disks. So if black plays h8 next, he has essentially sacrificed 6 stable disks for white and gained himself another 7 stable disks. And on top of that, this exchange on a black-white, black-white, finally black basis essentially changes from black's turn to white's turn. So this results in white having to make one more extra move on the outside, which are safe squares in general, to flip even more disks, which would create even more moves for black. So by performing this maneuver, black has successfully attacked this unbalanced edge that was originally white to the bottom and captured one more extra disk and also gained one more move in the game. So this sort of exchange is actually very favorable for black. So let us now take a look at what happens next. If white were to play, say, c2, because this is white's corner and the left side is white's edge, this is the stable disk, so naturally white would want to extend his influence from his strength, which is on the left. So let's say if white were to play a move like c2, black could then play something like g4, and the game could naturally progress something along these lines. So over here, as you can see, the number of moves that white has is getting lesser and lesser because of the exchange earlier. It's a lot easier for black to actually dictate play. So another example over here would be a 3 disk unbalanced edge for black over here, and now it is white to play. So given the idea of attacking unbalanced edges, what you can do over here is actually to convert this 3 disk unbalanced edge of your opponents to actually a 5 disk unbalanced edge to be able to do this exact same attacking maneuver. So what you can do is play h4. When you play h4, black has no choice but to respond to h3, because if he doesn't respond to h3 and play somewhere else, you can capture the corner. So when black defends the corner by playing h3, it basically forms a 5 disk unbalanced edge, which at the same time is also potentially attackable. So if you are playing white, you can now choose to play g1, which is similar to how we've seen the unbalanced edge being attacked earlier. And black would then respond with h1 to the corner, and if white grabs h2 here, and black goes into g2, white can then just jump into the corner at h8. So after talking about how edges or unbalanced edges can actually be attacked, we also want to talk about how edges and proper edge play can actually work to your advantage. So the 3 types of defense edge play that I want to talk about right now is creeping defense, sweeping defense, and checkerboarding defense. So over here in the first example, we like to look at creeping defense. So in this situation where it is white to play, you can see that you have many options, but a very good way to actually gain moves would be to play something like this, which is a quiet move, and at the same time is also creeping along the edge. So even though this is a 3 disk unbalanced edge for white, which seems to be a bit risky for white at the moment, but you can easily tell that if white continues to play h4 followed by h3 and then h2, white essentially gains 3 consecutive moves along the edges and just creeps along the edges and creates and results in forcing black to play even more moves on the outside. So let us take a look at what would happen from here. So if white were to play h4 and flip these two discs, white essentially doesn't create any additional moves for black. And if black were to play a6, which is a reasonable move, white can continue to play h3 over here and still continue to only flip one disc, and the disc is also surrounded by the existing discs, and at the same time it doesn't really create any new move for black to play. And of course, if black were to follow to play to c7, white can potentially play h2. However, currently white does not have a direct access to h2. So a nice way to create that access for himself would be to play something like b6 that flips these two this way and doesn't really create more moves for black per se, except for maybe the x squared to b7, which is perfectly fine for white. And if black were to choose to cut away that excess, a sequence that would reasonably follow would be this. And then finally, white goes here, black goes here, and white can capture to h2, which essentially forms a nice 6-disc balance edge. And finally, black. So it is important to actually note that you can actually work your way on the edges and perform a very creeping sort of defensive edge play, and that could eventually work to your advantage. Now, if we just play back to that situation that we were at earlier, and let's say if white has chosen to play somewhere else to the top, white would essentially create this along the 4th row and make that earlier creeping defense that we talked about impossible to play. Because if black were to play here and white goes here, white can no longer play consecutive moves to h3 and h2 safely. I would now like to talk about sweeping defense. So, playing as white right now, you have a 6-disc balance edge to the bottom, and you realize that it's your turn to move. So, how should you work the edge to your advantage? While black has tried to group his disc in the center and to the top, you have occupied the bottom with a strong balance edge. So, how can you actually work this to your advantage? So, there are a few ways. So sweeping defense basically refers to trying to control the excess of your opponent by removing the disc one layer at a time. So if you look at this 6 discs that you have, the next 2 discs that you want to target is probably D7 and E7. But when you want to capture these discs, you don't want to actually flip too many discs. So for example, if you were to play B5 now, it would be a very bad move for white, because if you play b5, black would actually get a very easy move to c4. So let's take a look at b5 first. Black would eventually get a very easy 1-disc flip, which is a quiet move to c4. So this is what we want to avoid. So at the same time, when you're targeting d7 and e7 to sweep the disc, you can also think about how you can actually preserve those moves. So for example, if you were to play h6, which is a very simple edge play and keep to your side of the board kind of move, when black plays, say, g4, this becomes freed up because this entire row is black. So b5 suddenly becomes an excellent move for white to play. So when white plays b5, he essentially sweeps away d7. And if black were to continue playing to g5 here, white can make one more move to b4 to sweep away that e7 disc, and hence controlling and hence gaining advantage to the edge. So this is what I call sweeping defense. So over here, once you've cleared out this row, black wouldn't have many choices. He only has c squared, x squared, and these 2 moves. So let's take a look at a5 being a center cross back and how you can work on the strength. So over here, after black has played this, you can continue to play on the inside and work to your advantage. So over here, when you play c4, you essentially flip 1, 2, 3 discs in two different directions. However, these 3 discs are actually surrounded by the existing discs on the board, so you don't really create many more moves for your opponent. Followed by black playing d3, which would be a reasonable response, and then you could then consider either c3 or b3, just pushing your way out from the strength of your balanced edge and still maintaining that inward shape. So you shouldn't be considering other moves at the moment. So you could consider b3, and the sequence could follow with c3, and then you can essentially capture the edge by playing a3, which only gives a reasonable move for black to play into a4, and you can then capture a6. So essentially you leave black with only c square or x square moves that give you the corner. So that is essentially sweeping defense. So finally you have what I call a checkerboarding defense kind of edge play. So over here as black, as you are about to make your next move, you can see that it is possible to achieve a checkerboard. So what exactly is a checkerboard? Let's take a look. When black plays b6, a reasonable response from white would be to play b5, because basically it flips 2 discs in the center of the group of discs, and it maintains roughly, it doesn't really create many new moves for black. So when white actually jumps into b5, there is an opportunity for black to form a checkerboard, a semi-checkerboard at least, to a5. When black plays a5, he creates a horizontal cut, but at the same time he controls this mini diagonal between c5 and e7. You can see that there is no way that white actually gains a nice access to b4, which is probably what white would want as a safe move. So this sort of a defensive kind of maneuver on the edge by making use of the bottom edge and to seal off the access to the right is what I call checkerboarding defense. And of course, the Japanese like to refer this to maybe line control, which is controlling this particular line over here. So that concludes the examples that I like to share for defensive edge play. Of course, there are so many ways to play edge play. So this is definitely not exhaustive, but these are some ways that you can play defensive edge play. Thank you very much for watching my video again, and stay tuned for more episodes.